while working as a police officer in suburban St. Louis in April of 2019. 37-year-old Julia Cruz responded to a reported shoplifting at a store in the upscale community of Ladue. Upon arriving at the scene, she encountered one of two suspects who she believed was trying to leave the store with stolen merchandise. According to news reports, the suspect fell in the parking lot and injured herself. Later identified as 33-year-old Ashley Fountain Hall, she began running when Cruz tried to handcuff her, prompting the officer to reach for her taser and warned that she was going to use it. In a regrettable and nearly fatal mix-up, Cruz mistakenly grabbed her gun and shot Fountain Hall. She immediately realized her mistake, but it was too late to take it back. Fountain Hall was rushed to the hospital where she survived after undergoing treatment for life-threatening injuries. Further investigation would later reveal that she was not shoplifting when she crossed paths with Cruz. A few days after the incident, Cruz resigned from the police force. She was subsequently charged with second-degree assault. In November of 2021, she and Fountain Hall participated in a restorative justice program, which gives offenders the opportunity to reconcile with the victim and the community at large. After talking at length with Cruz, Fountain Hall expressed her desire for the charge against the former officer to be dropped. She had already forgiven Cruz before their conversation, and both she and Cruz felt that they had reached a resolution outside the criminal justice system. The prosecutor honored the request, and Fountain Hall said she was focused on moving forward with her life. Number 12. Kyle Erikson. In March of 2018, NYPD officer Kyle Erikson and his partner, Elmer Pastran, pulled a driver over in Staten Island's Stapleton neighborhood for having a broken tail light, claiming to smell marijuana. The officers ordered the female driver and her passenger, Jason Serrano, out of the vehicle. Serrano let the officers know that he was recovering from a stab wound, but he was nevertheless forcefully thrown to the ground. He was accused of resisting arrest, but he later told The Intercept that he was trying to protect himself from further injury. After failing to find any contraband during an initial search of Serrano and the vehicle, Erikson could be heard telling Pastran in body cam footage that they had to find something. He appeared to place a nugget of marijuana in the vehicle's cup holder before exchanging a knowing glance with Pastran, at which point Serrano was arrested. To avoid a trial and possible jail time, Serrano pleaded guilty to resisting arrest. A few years later, his defense attorney received body cam footage of his arrest. Given the suspicious nature of Erikson's behavior in the video, the judge overseeing Serrano's case tossed his conviction, noting that his constitutional rights may have been violated during the traffic stop and search. It was later revealed that Erikson had previously been accused of planting drugs on a black man in an incident that had also been captured on body cam footage. In a statement, Serrano's attorney expressed appreciation toward the district attorney for dropping the case, but admonished the authorities for failing to discipline Erikson, who was still a member of the police force as of 2021. Number 11. Camden Burch Bo Shi. In April of 2024, police in Canton, Ohio, responded to the scene of a single-car crash where they found an abandoned vehicle and a downed power pole. The car's driver's side door was open and the airbag had been deployed. While officers were investigating the scene, a passerby told them that the person responsible for the crash was in a nearby Amvet's lodge. When the cops entered the lodge, a woman asked them to remove a man later identified as 53-year-old Frank Tyson. Officers Bo Shi and Camden Burch, both 24 years old, approached Tyson, who knocked over a stool and ordered them to get the sheriff. In body cam footage of the incident, Tyson could be heard repeatedly saying, "They're trying to kill me," and "Call the sheriff." As the officers took Tyson to the ground, one of them could be heard warning the obviously distressed gentleman that he was going to get pepper sprayed. They handcuffed Tyson, and one of the cops could be seen putting his knee on the man's upper body. Tyson repeatedly said, "I can't breathe," while one of the officers told him to calm down and stop fighting. The officer reportedly kept his knee on Tyson for about 30 seconds. After he removed his knee, Tyson could be heard saying, "I can't breathe," once more. Someone told him he was fine and to shut up, but he soon became motionless. As he lay on the floor in a seemingly unresponsive state, At least one of the officers could be heard joking around with bar patrons, while the other appeared to be in no hurry to check on his condition. It eventually became clear to the police that Tyson was having a medical emergency, at which point they began to make life-saving efforts. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital, and Burch and Shonegi were placed on administrative leave while state authorities investigated. In November, a grand jury charged the officers with reckless homicide, which carries a maximum prison sentence of 3 years and a fine of up to $10,000. Both officers pleaded not guilty and are currently free on bond amid the ongoing case. Number 10. Jason Dyatt. While working as a police sergeant in Eastern Maryland in April of 2024, 38-year-old Jason Dyatt was accused of using his department-issued cell phone to communicate with teenagers in Talbot County in an inappropriate manner. According to charging documents, Dyatt used his position of authority to engage in an illicit relationship with one victim in November of 2022. He's accused of sending photos of himself in uniform to the high school student on Snapchat, including one image which was captioned, "Come get daddy." Dyatt sent the victim other provocative content, including explicit photos, and the two engaged in intercourse on several occasions. Later that month, Dyatt began communicating with another minor victim using his department-issued phone. They were intimate in his patrol vehicle on at least one occasion while Dyatt was on duty. After learning that he was under investigation, Dyatt made several incriminating Google searches, including the legal consent age in Maryland and the penalties for violating certain laws involving misconduct with underage individuals. Following a jury trial in September, he was found guilty of 2 counts of misconduct. Prosecutors urged the judge to impose prison time, and Dyatt was sentenced to 6 months behind bars, followed by 3 years of probation. He also no longer works in law enforcement and probably never will again. Number 9. Jovani Crespo. During a traffic stop in Newark, New Jersey, in January of 2019, 35-year-old Andrew Dixon and 46-year-old Gregory Griffin sped away from the scene. Officer Jovani Crespo opened fire on the vehicle while running after it on foot. He jumped out of his police cruiser and shot at the car at least twice more throughout the miles-long pursuit, shooting both of its occupants in the head. The driver, Gregory Griffin, died the next day while Andrew Dixon survived his injuries. Crespo claimed that he saw a gun in the car while other officers at the scene admitted that they couldn't see inside the vehicle due to the darkness of the window tint. Following an investigation, prosecutors charged Crespo with aggravated manslaughter, aggravated assault, official misconduct, and weapon-related counts. After deliberating for several days at the end of a 7-week trial, a jury found him guilty on all counts in June of 2023. Crespo immediately fought to overturn the verdict, arguing that the trial should have been held outside the area. He also argued that the Essex County Prosecutor's Office lacked the jurisdiction to investigate the case, and that the investigation should have been carried out by the State Attorney General's office. The appeal was rejected, and in May of 2024, Crespo was sentenced to 27 years in prison. With good behavior, he could see freedom again in just under 23 years. The sentence came as a disappointment to his tearful mother, who had pleaded with the court for leniency, while the victims' families felt that the outcome was justified. Number 8. Ricky Anderson. While executing a search warrant at a Columbus, Ohio residence in August of 2022, police officer Ricky Anderson opened fire on a 20-year-old unarmed black man who was in bed. Body cam footage showed the 30-year veteran of the force almost immediately opening fire on Donovan Lewis after bursting into the bedroom where he was sleeping. Lewis was rushed to the hospital where he died from his injuries. Anderson and 3 other officers had gone to the apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning to arrest Lewis on several misdemeanor warrants, including for domestic violence and assault. But it was evident based on the body cam video that Lewis did not do anything to justify Anderson's decision to pull the trigger. Several months after the shooting, Anderson retired from the police department in bad standing, but was still eligible to collect his pension. In August of 2023, Roughly a year after the incident, he was charged with murder and reckless homicide. Anderson pleaded not guilty and is currently free on bond. In addition to the criminal charges, the disgraced former cop is being sued by Lewis's family for wrongful death, battery, breach of duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit also accuses the Columbus Police Department of using aggressive, street-style policing tactics in areas with high concentrations of black residents. In addition to seeking monetary compensation, the family is calling on the city's law enforcement to adopt 11 new reform policies, which aim to expand the agency's transparency and prevent future killings of innocent civilians. Number 7. Gonzalo Zenas. In June of 2021, Officer Gonzalo Zenas and several of his colleagues responded to a call about a suspected shoplifter at a shopping mall in Glendale, California. The teenage suspect resisted when officers attempted to take him into custody inside one of the mall's stores, resulting in the decision to use force to subdue him. He accused the cops of being excessive in their handling of the situation and claimed that he didn't realize that 3 of the 4 responding officers were members of law enforcement because they were not in uniform. The Glendale Police Department launched an internal investigation, and all the officers involved were placed on administrative leave. Nearly 3 years later, in June of 2024, 39-year-old Zenas was charged with 1 count of assault by a public officer for kicking the suspect in the head during the arrest. He remains on administrative leave while the other 3 officers have since returned to duty. The incident was captured on video, which has been released to the public in the name of transparency. In addition to kicking the suspect in the head, the responding officers can be seen punching him and briefly squeezing his neck while holding him down by his legs. If convicted as charged, Zenas could face up to 3 years in county jail. Number 6. Sierra Olson. In October of 2024, 36-year-old police officer Sierra Olson was arrested in Prince George's County, Maryland, for illegally driving 3 BMWs that had been stolen from a rental car company at Reagan National Airport. While it's unclear how Olson came to drive the vehicles, she's not accused of stealing them. Her arrest came several months after the rental company discovered that 30 of its vehicles were missing. While it's not entirely unusual for rental cars to disappear from time to time, it's unusual for this many to vanish from a single location. When contacted by Fox 5 DC, the company declined to comment on the matter beyond stating that it was cooperating with an ongoing investigation. Olson was equally unwilling to discuss the situation when questioned by reporters outside the courthouse, responding to questions by telling the press to get their cameras out of her face. Olson is currently suspended without pay as she awaits her next court date, which is scheduled for December. She faces 3 counts of unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and other related charges, but is not currently suspected of having any connection to the 27 rental cars that remain unaccounted for. Number 5. Wesley Shifflet. 37-year-old Timothy Johnson was fatally shot by Fairfax County, Virginia police officer Wesley Shifflet in February of 2023 during an alleged shoplifting incident at Tyson's Corner Center Mall. Shifflet and other officers were alerted to a person stealing sunglasses by loss prevention officers, who led them to the suspect. Johnson fled the scene on foot, and Shifflet chased him into a nearby wooded area where he and another officer opened fire after yelling to stop reaching and get on the ground. Johnson died from a gunshot wound to the chest, and it was determined that Shifflet fired the fatal bullet. In body cam footage of the incident, Johnson could be heard begging for help as he lay on the ground dying following the incident. Shifflet was fired for failing to live up to the department's expectations, while the other officer, James Sadler, was placed on modified restrictive duty. Shifflet was later charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless discharge of a firearm. Johnson's family described the shooting as an execution, but Shifflet fought the charges. He took the stand in his own defense during his trial in September 2024, telling the jury that he believed Johnson was reaching for a gun in his waistband and that he resorted to deadly force out of a fear for his life. After deliberating for 11 hours, the jury acquitted Shifflet of the manslaughter charge, but found him guilty of reckless handling of a weapon. Shifflet has not yet been sentenced and continues to fight the case. Number 4. Melissa Williams. After working as a sheriff's deputy in Arapahoe County, Colorado, for more than 11 years, 46-year-old Lieutenant Melissa Williams claimed that she was forced to quit in 2022 after her superiors discovered that she was moonlighting as an OnlyFans model, going by the stage name Lexi Bella. She had started her Spicy Side gig in 2020 as a way to keep intimacy with her husband exciting and to de-stress from her day job. After local officials discovered Williams' OnlyFans account, she resigned from the sheriff's office and received a $30,000 severance package. A year later, she told Jam Press that she had made upwards of $27,000 from her work as an adult model since her departure from law enforcement. Williams said she had no regrets about her career change, and she also refused to feel ashamed about her decision to pursue a controversial line of work. Number 3. Francesco Marlet. During the fall of 2023, a video of a married St. George's County, Maryland police officer kissing a scantily clad woman who wasn't his wife while on duty went viral. In the footage, 34-year-old Francesco Marlet could be seen making out with the woman before they both got into the back seat of his patrol car. Following the incident, Marlet's estranged wife, 29-year-old Paula, claimed in a social media post that her husband had been having an affair with the woman in the video for years. In another post, Paula urged those who care about her to check in on her during what she described as a painful time. Despite the obviously hurtful and embarrassing nature of the situation, the married couple was seen together with their children in public just days later. Community members also seemed offended by the footage, with many commenting that Marlet had disrespected his profession with the way he had acted while in uniform, and while using his agency-issued vehicle. Marlet was suspended from his job pending the outcome of an investigation. He remains off work more than a year later and is scheduled to go before a hearing board in November of 2024. Today's topic was requested by Benny Saturn. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Sandy Caesar. 48-year-old Linda Johnson of Honolulu, Hawaii, struggled for years with mental illness and homelessness. With help from community members who helped her get into treatment, she eventually managed to achieve stability and a steady place to live. On a Sunday evening in February of 2022, police arrested Johnson for being on a beach in Waikiki during after hours. She was taken to a police station 25 miles away for processing and had no way to get home when she was released. Johnson spent more than 2 days stranded at the station as he tried to figure out how to get back to town. During the early evening, Johnson was brutally beaten with a tree trunk just feet away from the station's entrance by 48-year-old Michael Kalama Armstrong, who had been released from custody just 35 minutes earlier. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition and later succumbed to her injuries. Armstrong had a long history of mental illness and violent behavior and had been arrested the previous day for assaulting a police officer and a worker at his assisted living facility. Despite his history of aggressive outbursts, prosecutors declined to charge him with any crimes and he was released. He and Johnson did not know each other and the attack appeared to be random. A witness who had tried to help Johnson accused one of the police department's desk officers of ignoring Johnson when she was in dire need of life-saving help. In February of 2024, the officer, Sandy Caesar, was fired from the department. An agency spokesperson has not revealed whether Johnson's murder has anything to do with the decision to terminate Caesar, citing a policy of not commenting on pending personnel matters. In the meantime, the attorney overseeing Johnson's estate is appealing a judge's decision to throw out a wrongful death lawsuit, accusing certain police officers of being responsible for the tragedy. If you are not riled up enough just yet after this video, then stick around after number 1 to watch our previously released episode about insanely mild sentences that left everyone baffled. Number 1. Larry McDonald. Over a 2-year period, started in 2022 18 current and former East Cleveland, Ohio police officers were charged with dozens of crimes. Included among them was 47-year-old Commander Larry McDonald, who was accused of fleeing the scene of an accident after a suspect he was pursuing lost control of their vehicle and crashed. The 42-year-old suspect died from injuries sustained during the collision. McDonald failed to report the chase or the accident, but his body cam captured footage of him entering a bar afterward. This was the second time McDonald had failed to report a pursuit that ended in a deadly crash, with the other incident occurring in March of 2022 and resulted in the death of 20-year-old Teron Everton Brown. The chase reportedly reached speeds of nearly 100 miles per hour before Brown lost control of his car and struck more than a dozen vehicles. McDonald resigned from his position after falling under investigation. He's facing a laundry list of criminal charges, including tampering with evidence, tampering with records, leaving the scene of an accident, telecommunications fraud, dereliction of duty, and obstructing official business. Number 7. Alexis Rogers. New Mexico teen Alexis Rogers was driving in the South Valley on the night of March the 20th of 2018 when a motorist in a Dodge Challenger swerved in front of her. After bailing out of a left turn, Rogers proceeded to angrily chase the Challenger down, at which point a passenger in her vehicle pulled out a firearm and shot into the other car. 16-year-old Efrain Azate was consequently killed, prompting Rogers and the shooter, identified as her boyfriend, Damian Luna, also 16 at the time, to go on the run. They reportedly fled to Texas, Nevada, and Colorado before finally being tracked down and taken into police custody on murder charges. During subsequent questioning, Rogers told detectives that she chose not to come forward following the shooting because she was scared of Luna, whom she accused of physically abusing her. The young woman also allegedly admitted to having been high on Xanax during the road rage incident that claimed Azate's life. After posting her $150,000 bail, Rogers was ordered not to consume drugs or alcohol and was also given an 8 p.m. curfew. In direct defiance of the judge's decrees, the 19-year-old was alleged to have hosted a party with roughly 100 attendees at her Albuquerque home. In the early hours of the morning, one of the partygoers was fatally shot, following an altercation that left Rogers herself unconscious. In the end, despite Rogers' perpetual non-compliance, her attempts to portray herself as a victim proved effective in court, and she was ultimately granted a plea deal that greatly reduced the severity of her charges. In June of 2019, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison in connection to Azate's killing, a punishment that many viewed as far too lenient considering the circumstances of the case. Number 6. Kim Potter. Minnesota police officer Kim Potter pulled over a motorist in Brooklyn Center for an expired license plate and illegal air freshener on April the 11th of 2021. During the course of the traffic stop, the 48-year-old policewoman learned that the driver, 20-year-old Deontay Wright, had an outstanding warrant. Potter, her supervisor, and the police trainee subsequently tried to arrest the unarmed man, who attempted to flee the scene. Body cam footage of the incident showed the supervisor and trainee officer trying to prevent Wright from driving away while Potter warned him, "I'll tase you." She then yelled, "Taser, taser, taser," prompting the other officers to release their grip on the suspect. Potter then unholstered her service handgun and fired a single round into Wright, who drove off before losing control and crashing into another vehicle in a nearby intersection. The man was administered CPR but ultimately pronounced dead at the scene. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office subsequently determined Wright's manner of death to be homicide. A few days later, Potter was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter, which carries a maximum penalty of 10 years incarceration and a $20,000 fine in the state of Minnesota. During the case's legal proceedings, Potter maintained that she'd mistakenly grabbed her firearm while attempting to reach for her taser. Prosecutors labeled the fatal error a product of the officer's recklessness and negligence. Her defense team attempted to portray the incident as an honest mistake rather than a criminal act. Potter was ultimately convicted of both first and second-degree manslaughter. In December of 2021, the prosecution requested that she be sentenced to 7 years and 2 months. However, in February of 2022, Potter was ordered to serve just 16 months behind bars, with an additional 8 months she could avoid with good behavior. While the victim's family was dismayed by the light sentence, they were awarded more than $3 million after settling a wrongful death lawsuit with the city of Brooklyn Center in the summer of 2022. Number 5. Cali Kaz. On June the 25th of 2016, Colorado woman Cali Kaz hit a cyclist while driving near 30th and J Road in North Boulder. It later emerged that the motorist had swerved 3 feet into the bike lane, and the resulting collision claimed 35-year-old Bill Davis's life. Kaz drove off but was later tracked down by Boulder police officers, who reportedly found a 30-pack of beer in her car with only 5 cans left unopened. At the time of the crash, the woman had also been on probation for driving while impaired earlier that year. During the ensuing criminal trial, Kaz's father vehemently defended her, claiming that the media had sensationalized the case and unreasonably painted her as an evil villain. He also appeared to levy some of the blame for the fatal incident on the victim himself, saying, "If you ride on the open road, be aware about what can happen," which elicited an audible gasp from court spectators. Kaz ultimately pleaded guilty to vehicular homicide and DUI charges and was consequently sentenced to 12 years in prison. Davis's widowed wife said in the sentencing's aftermath that 12 years is definitely not long enough for someone who takes a life in that manner. Number 4. PRAA. In December of 2010, a Thai team was operating a vehicle on a tollway without a driver's license when she crashed into a van carrying 14 people coming from Thammasat University's Rangsit campus. The van consequently flipped over and was sent plummeting off the elevated expressway. 8 of its passengers were killed after having been thrown from the vehicle, while a 9th victim succumbed to their injuries later at the hospital. The 16-year-old motorist, commonly referred to as PRAA, was arrested and charged with driving without a license as well as reckless driving causing death and injury. Despite the severity of the incident, PRAA was only ordered to complete 138 hours of community service as punishment, a mandate she reportedly took 4 years to fulfill. She was also banned from driving until the age of 25, but many still considered the consequences for her actions to have been disproportionately mild. In a separate verdict handed down in civil court, PRAA was instructed to pay nearly $800,000 in restitution to the victims of the fatal accident, as well as the families of those killed. Number 3. The judgments of Timothy Q Fely. Massachusetts Superior Court Justice Timothy Q Fely came under fire following a series of questionable rulings made over the course of a few months in 2018. The first of 3 heavily scrutinized decisions was handed down in March. Fely allowed a Salem man accused of assaulting a child out of jail after setting his bail at just $100, ignoring the ardent protests of prosecutors. Only a month later, the judge faced similar criticism for lowering the bail for 29-year-old John Williams, a Maine resident with a lengthy rap sheet. 2 weeks after Williams was released from custody, he reportedly gunned down a Somerset County Sheriff's deputy during a traffic stop. Then in May, Fely was widely pilloried for a light sentence given to drug dealer Manuel Soto Bettini. The Peabody resident had pleaded guilty to possession with intent to distribute heroin and cocaine after having been caught with more than 15 grams of illegal substances. The prosecution sought a 1 to 3 year prison term for 33-year-old Soto Bettini. However, Fely ultimately sentenced him to 2 years of probation in lieu of jail time. Massachusetts lawmakers subsequently pressured the House Speaker to hold a vote on a resolution seeking to impeach Fely from the Salem Superior Court. Furthermore, an online petition calling for Fely's removal was started, and as of the latest updates was nearing 10,000 signatures. Number 2. Brock Turner. In the early hours of January the 18th of 2015, a pair of Swedish graduate students at Stanford University in California came upon an assault in progress behind a dumpster on campus. According to their testimony, Brock Allen Turner, then a 19-year-old student athlete, was laying on top of an unconscious woman whose dress had been pulled up to expose her genitals. When the eyewitnesses, who'd been cycling around campus at the time, confronted the young man, he reportedly fled the scene. One of the cyclists went to check on the victim while the other chased Turner down and pinned him to the ground until the arrival of law enforcement. The young woman, identified as 22-year-old Chanel Miller, regained consciousness at the hospital a few hours later. She had sustained numerous injuries, including abrasions and erythema on her skin, as well as bruising, piercing, and cutting wounds. Miller told investigators that she hadn't consented to the acts Turner had forced upon her. The teen was arrested and released the same day after posting a $150,000 bail. His initial indictment imposed 5 total charges to which he pleaded not guilty. Rather than face disciplinary actions from Stanford, Turner withdrew from the university, which nevertheless banned him from ever stepping foot on campus again. The case's trial commenced on March the 14th of 2016. 16 days later, Turner was found guilty of 3 felony counts, and prosecutors recommended a 6-year prison sentence. However, presiding judge Aaron Persky sentenced him to just 6 months in jail, followed by 3 years of probation. The decision was met with widespread criticism, and Judge Persky was ultimately recalled by county voters in June of 2018. Turner was released for good behavior after serving only half of his sentence. Number 1. Michael McGowan. Florida police were called to an Airbnb in Miami on May the 18th of 2020 after receiving reports of shots fired on the premises. When they arrived, officers came upon 17-year-old Giselle Gigi Rengifo dead on the ground with a gunshot wound to the head. A black handgun and magazine were also found atop a desk, positioned near the house's front door. In the aftermath, Michael McGowan, also 17 at the time, allegedly confessed to having been holding the firearm when it accidentally discharged, killing Rengifo. The 2 teens had been among a group of partiers at the Airbnb who had begun passing around the weapon before it unexpectedly went off. McGowan was arrested and charged with manslaughter. During the ensuing court proceedings, the young man's legal defense team argued that the shooting had been entirely accidental and that everyone at the house that night had handled the gun at some point, including the victim. They also referred to McGowan's age at the time of the incident, attempting to portray him to the jury as just a reckless kid. The prosecution challenged the validity of the age argument, saying, "He's not a child. He was almost 18 years old." McGowan wasn't ultimately tried as an adult, which would have come with a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. Instead, he was sentenced to 364 days in Dade County Jail, followed by 4 years of probation and mandatory attendance of a county boot camp program. Rengifo's family expressed outrage at what they perceived to be an extremely lenient punishment. Immediately following the announcement of the sentence, several family members began shouting in the courtroom. In a particularly dramatic moment, the victim's mother pointed at McGowan and tearfully said, "I can't hear her calling me Mummy anymore. You took that from me." Thanks for watching. What did you want to be when you were growing up, and what job are you doing now? Let us know in the comments section below.